Well, the Senate confirmation hearings for Neil Gorsuch, perhaps more notable for what the Supreme Court nominee isn't saying than what he is. Now, he's sidestepping questions about how he views previous Supreme Court decisions, and he is reluctant, if not downright refusing, to say how he would rule on issues like guns, voting rights, president's travel ban, or just about anything else. Are these hearings, and for that matter, hearings like them before that, the best way for senators, and more importantly, we the people, to learn about someone nominated for the highest court in the land and a lifetime appointment at that? Well, Michael Dorf is a constitutional law professor at Cornell University. He's calling this the Kabuki confirmation hearings, and he's kind enough to join us. Michael, thanks for the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, you didn't even coin that phrase. Then Senator Biden said that back in 2005. Is this the best way to go about this? Because it's funny, in seeing your piece and also reading some other comments, before he was ever a justice, Rehnquist said, my God, what a waste here. They didn't push, I guess it was Whitaker, then the nominee at the time, hard enough on key issues. When pressed on it, he said, well, I may have misspoke when I was a younger man. Kagan, she was a law professor. She questioned how the process worked in very strong language until she went through the process herself. Is there a better way to do it than the way we do, or is it just, you know, like you said, a kabuki dance where you try to avoid as best you can for all the obvious reasons?
The answer differs depending on whether you're the nominee or a senator or the American public. From the perspective of a nominee, I don't think there really is an alternative. The Senate, like our politics generally, is highly partisan and highly bifurcated. And so giving very specific answers on controversial questions like abortion or gun rights or affirmative action or school prayer or almost anything is likely to alienate roughly half of the people whose votes you're trying to get. Now, in this case, Judge Gorsuch probably could afford to alienate all of the Democrats and still get through, but why would he want to do that? His better tactic, like those of all of the nominees to come before him in the last 30 years or so, is simply to give non-answers, to make clear that he's very knowledgeable about the law, as he is, to show himself to be affable and personable. And then the senators can squirm in frustration. From the senators' perspective, of course, what they want more than anything else is to be on television, and so they get that, and that leaves the American public, who I think doesn't learn all that much from these hearings, except perhaps they pick up some law along the way, and as a constitutional law professor, I have to say I like that.
Well, I want to get to some of the benefits, but did we almost see an anomaly earlier today when Gorsuch, in effect, answered the question to a degree, I guess, when it came to Roe v. Wade, where he said it was settled law of the land. And then when asked and pressed further, he said, yeah, basically this is settled. Were you surprised he was as forthcoming as even that?
No, not really. He's been doing that throughout the hearings starting yesterday. I think it reads a little too much into that to say that when he says it's settled, that means it wouldn't be overturned. You can think about sand settling on the bottom of the ocean. It's settled until a big wave comes and disturbs it. So when he says it's settled law, all he means by that is the Supreme Court has settled it for now. If a case were to come before the court and he were on the court, and the question is, should the case be overruled, he would give it the weight that precedent is due, but sometimes the court overrules its precedent. So I think that is a code that the nominee uses to say, I recognize it's settled law. Some people will hear that and be reassured, but meanwhile, people who are strongly pro-life and want to see the court overrule Roe v. Wade are confident that he has been chosen because of a calculation that he is the sort of justice who is likely to do that. I fully believe Judge Gorsuch when he says he's given nobody any assurances to that effect. But everybody who's paying attention knows what the key issues are, and that's one of them. So I don't take any great stock in the fact that he regards an issue as settled law, because the Supreme Court can always unsettle it.
In your piece, you talk about how, as a young professor, Elena Kagan wrote a piece about these hearings, confirmation hearings, and she said, among other things, that they were a vapid and hollow charade. While tough, you think she might have gone a little bit overboard. In your piece, you talk about that it's an education for the American public, and especially in these times, some of the things that we hear Gorsuch say are more important than maybe in normal times?
Sure. So here are a couple of things he said. He's repeatedly said, I am my own man, when asked whether he had made promises to President Trump, whether he agreed with or would uphold various policies of the Trump administration. So he doesn't answer the questions directly, but he says, I'm my own man, thus signaling that once on the court, he will exercise the power of a justice in an independent branch of the government. And he's also said no man is above the law. Now, those are both anodyne platitudes, and in any other time, I would say that that doesn't really tell us very much. But at this point in our history, when we have a president who is challenging many of the norms on which our democracy rests, it is useful for people to hear that from the nominee of the very president who's challenging those norms.
Very interesting stuff. Michael, I certainly appreciate the time. Michael Dorf, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Coming up, everyone, we're going to take a look at some local headlines, so please stay with us.